So hello guys, in this game Carlsen played an amazing mind-blowing endgame against the god of speed chess Hikaru Nakamura. So watch till the end. I am your host Bison. So Carlsen starts the game with d4. Okay, d5 by Hikaru, then comes c4, Queen's Gambit, and Hikaru continued with c6, which is called Slav Defense. Now Carlsen continued with the modern line of the Slav Defense. Knight to f6, developing the knight, then e3, strengthening the center. This is called quiet variation. Now Hikaru simply pins the knight by bishop to g4, transposing towards the pinned defense. Then Carlsen simply played h3, questioning the bishop on g4. Are you staying or leaving? Then Hikaru retreats back his bishop on h5. Now Carlsen exchange in the center. This clarifies the pawn structure and open lines for his pieces. Sometimes a clear center makes future plan easier. Now Carlsen developed his knight on c3, reinforcing the center and keeping a strong position. Hikaru continued with e6, opening the diagonal for this light square bishop while reinforcing this d5 pawn. Now Carlsen strikes towards the king's side by playing g4, hitting the bishop, and after bishop to g6, Carlsen centralizes his knight with knight e5, placing it on a powerful square where it can impact both sides of the board as well as attacks the bishop. Okay, but Hikaru tries to exchange the knight by playing knight at f goes to d7, and after this, Carlsen grabbed the bishop and Hikaru takes back with his h-pawn. Now what Hikaru get after this? You can see that he has an open h-file for his rook. After this, Carlsen placed his bishop on g2, fianchettoing it so that it can exert the long-range pressure along the diagonal. But here Carlsen is also preparing to castle. Knight to c6 by Hikaru, but Carlsen strikes at the center by playing e4, opening up the lines for his pieces. This move is like throwing the doors at the party, and suddenly everything in motion. Then Hikaru takes on e4, knight takes e4, and then Hikaru gives the check from his bishop, and you can't defend it with the bishop, otherwise you will lose the d4 pawn. Hence Carlsen defends it by knight to c3. Okay, knight to b6, creating pressure on this d4 pawn, but Carlsen simply castled, saying to Hikaru that if you take my pawn, I will grab yours. Hence, in this position, Hikaru plays safe. He castled, and now comes d5, attacking the knight. Hikaru simply takes back with his e-pawn, and Carlsen takes back with his knight. And here black can exchange the knight, but this will not give any special advantage to the black. Hence, bishop to c5 by Hikaru, targeting the weak points in the white position and preparing for counterplay. After this, Carlsen also takes back his knight because it is not doing too much here. Hence, knight to c3, as well as it's also aimed for the e4 square. But he can't simply decline, but here, yeah. And it also asked for the queen exchange, and black declined it, and he played bishop to d4, threatening to take the knight and destroying the pawn structure. Suppose if capture, then you can see that white has the horrible pawn structure. Hence, after seeing this, Carlsen placed his queen on f3, developing the queen as well as eyeing on the knight. After this, Hikaru placed his queen on f6, asking for queen exchange, and Carlsen simply exchanged the queen. And after bishop takes f6, then he placed his bishop on f4, which connects the both rook. And after this, he placed his a rook on d file. Carlsen also placed his rook on d file, asking for rook exchange. But firstly, Hikaru takes on c3, disrupting the white pawn structure, and then he continued with knight a4, attacking the pawn, but Carlsen simply pushes it further by c4. Knight to c3, attacking the pawn as well as the rook, but simply rook to d2 by Carlsen. And guys, believe me, this is not an ordinary move because this hangs the a2 pawn after. And after rook takes d2, bishop takes d2, and if black becomes greedy and he captured the a2 pawn by knight takes a2, then white will capture the knight first. After this, then comes rook to a1, and you can see that this knight is trapped. Hence, one thing is clear, that this knight can't be taken. This pawn can't be taken. Hence, he gives the check first from his knight, and after king to h2, then he placed rook to d8, attacking the bishop. Carlsen simply moves it on e3, and in next move, white can place its rook on b1, which hits the b7 pawn. But Hikaru simply plays knight to c3, hitting the a2 pawn, and then comes a3. And now black brings his rook towards d3. Intentions are to play knight d1, attacking the bishop as well as the a3 pawn from the rook. From this and to take this. But here Carlsen finds a great move, which is rook to c1, failing the intentions of black. And after this, Hikaru attacks on the bishop by knight to d1. But Carlsen counterattacks it with bishop to e4, and which attacks the rook, and Hikaru retreats his rook on d7. And then Carlsen saves his bishop on c5. Now you can see that knight is very close to get trapped. Hence, after seeing this, Hikaru placed his knight on b2. Okay, rook to c2. Here Carlsen is attacking the knight again. Knight to a4, attacking the bishop. Carlsen moves his bishop on e3. Then knight to b6, and now c5, attacking the knight. Now knight moves on d5, attacking the bishop. But Carlsen simply pins it by rook to d2. Okay, knight to f6, attacking the bishop again, as well as asking for the rook exchange. And Carlsen simply exchanged the rooks, and then he brings his king forward into the game. Now from here you will see the magic of Carlsen in the end game. Okay, king to f8. Nakamura is also bringing his king forward towards the center. Now Carlsen just pushes his f pawn further, taking control over these squares. Knight to f6, attacking the bishop again. Then bishop to f3, king to e7, just shuffling moves. F5, attacking the pawn. G takes f5, G takes f5, king to d7, opening the e7 square for this knight so that black can take control over the f5 square. Hence, Carlsen defends this f5 pawn by bringing his king forward on f4. And now from here, Hikaru makes an error by bringing his knight towards the 8th rank. Here Hikaru wants to open the f6 square so that he can play f6 in future, but it also underdevelops the knight. Instead of this, the better move for black is just to play king on c7 so that knight can jump on d7, which activates the knight even better, which eyes on the king side as well as the queen side. But after this, Carlsen brings his king on g5. Here Carlsen is planning to push his h pawn, king to e7, bishop to f4, allowing it to control more squares. And after this, Hikaru made a mistake by playing a6, creating a weak backward pawn which can be taken by this light square bishop if it somehow get placed on c8. Then comes h4. White is planning for his to promote this, and king backs on f8, maybe this and this. Bishop to g3, just shuffling. Knight to f6, bishop to f6, d6 check, king to d8, king to f4, preparing for bishop e5, trying to capture this knight. And if the knight on c6 captured the bishop, then white will bring his king forward, and you can see that white will be better. Hence, Nakamura played knight to d7, bishop to g2, king to d8, king to g5, king to e8, h5, knight to f6, preparing for knight to c7 check, and Carlsen played h6, knight to h7 check, king to h5, knight to f6 check, king goes on g5, knight to h7 check. Will Carlsen takes the draw from here? No, he brings his king back on h4, sacrificing this h6 pawn. And after g takes h6, king to h5, attacking this h6 pawn which can't be defended. Hence, Hikaru develops his knight first by giving a check, and after king takes h6, knight to g4. And here black can also play knight to d4, which hits the e5, but that's okay, no problem. Okay, so king g7 by Carlsen. Now look at the Carlsen king. Bros entered towards the black territory without any fear. Oh boy. Knight to d4. Finally Hikaru played it. Carlsen defends it from the bishop e4, and now Hikaru targets the bishop by playing knight to f2. And then bishop backs on b1, knight to g4, bishop to f4, just shuffling moves, and now from here blacks made a terrible mistake by playing f6. This move is played to stop this f6 pawn so that it can't get pushed further, but it also disconnects the pawn from the king, which makes it isolate. But now from here Carlsen played bishop to e4, threatening to capture the b7 pawn. Okay, knight to f2, attacking the bishop, and Carlsen takes his bishop back on b1. Here you might thinking that why Carlsen didn't capture this b7 pawn. Here the reasons is, suppose if he captured the b7 pawn after this, then black will simply play knight to d3, hitting the bishop and the pawn. And if bishop to d6, then comes knight takes f5 check, and you can see that white has to lose his bishop as well as black will capture these pawns in the futures. Hence, he played bishop to b1, which is a very good move. Knight to g4, defending the f6 pawn, but simply bishop to e4, attacking this pawn again. Okay, knight to f2, attacking the bishop. Now bishop takes on b7, knight to d3, hitting the bishop as well as the pawn. And from this position, Carlsen finds a god level move, which is, now pause the video and try to find it by yourself. The move is king takes f6, sacrificing the bishop, because after knight takes bishop, then Carlsen can play king to e5, attacking the both knights, and Hikaru brings his knight on e2, defending the other knight. But now you might be wondering that why Carlsen sacrificed his bishop. It is because this sacrifice deflects the knight from this queenside area, so that so you can see that this knight is guarding this, and the path of this pawn is completely cleared, and in future it will promote this, which is supported by the bishop. Hence, but after this Carlsen makes a huge blunder, and instead of pushing this c pawn, he pushed his f pawn, which is a huge blunder because black defends his a pawn by playing a5, which becomes a barrier for this a pawn to get promoted. Instead of the move f6, from this position, here better move is to play c6. Why it is the best move? So, here, suppose to defend this, for example, to defend this pawn to promotion, the only move for black is to capture. And suppose if black didn't capture and he tries to stop it by his king, then white will promote his pawn by playing f6. You can stop this pawn but not this pawn, and the king can't stop these alone. So hence this move is a blunder. After this, a5, the game continued with a4, which is creating a blockade. King to f7, stopping this f6 pawn from promotion. Then Carlsen gives a check from his bishop, and in this position the better move for black is to play king to g6, and if white tries to push f7 further, then comes king to g7, king to d6, and finally king to f8, and the king is permanently stuck on this dark f8 square. Since white has the light square bishop, it can't deliver any check to the king on f8. And if white tries to promote this c pawn, then black knight will simply grabs it, and after bishop takes, you can see that both sides will have only this pawn, and this pawn can't be promoted, and this bishop can't do here nothing because it is in light square. Yeah, but suppose if this bishop is in a dark square, then white is completely winning here. Hence, but after bishop to d5, yeah, here Hikaru, instead of playing king to g6, he blundered and he placed his king to f8, because after this Carlsen finds a beautiful move, king to e4, deflecting the knight, and after knight to c2, he played c6, promoting his pawn, and after knight to c3 check, simply king to e5, and then he grabs the a4 pawn, but this is of no use because Carlsen simply forked the board knight by bishop to b3. Okay, knight to b6, trying to stop this pawn from promotion, but simply bishop takes c2, and after a4, c7, and after king to f7, the final move played by Carlsen is bishop takes a4, deflecting the knight so that it can promote. What an amazing game by Carlsen, and from this position Hikaru resigned. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. Hit that subscribe button for more. I am your host Bison, signing off. Bye bye.